When I look back on my journey of faith, what I see clearly is this: Jesus shares fully in human weakness, making his priesthood, his incarnation, passionate and accessible. My call to ministry came during one of the most disorienting times of my life. I just graduated from college and thought I had it all figured out. I'm going to travel a bit, and then I'm going to find a job in my field. That summer after graduation, I was living in Charleston, South Carolina, in a temporary job teaching sailing camp. One day in July, while filling out an application for a job that I might take, I got a phone call that changed everything. My dad had been in a car accident. He'd suffered a traumatic brain injury. He lived, but it would take 10 long months in the hospital before he was able to come home. In an instant, my dad went from being my encourager, my wise counsel, my steady support, to being the one who needed care for every part of his life. Losing your primary support person is devastating. My dad had always been the one to cheer me on, offer advice, and even back me up financially. Suddenly, he couldn't do any of that. I felt like my whole foundation had been shaken. At the same time, I was teaching kids how to sail in that sailing camp. And in my teaching, I explained to them that to move a sailboat forward, you had to have the right parts. You had to have sails to catch the wind. You had to have a keel or a centerboard to give you forward momentum, and a rudder for direction and stability. When my dad had his accident, I realized I felt like a boat without a centerboard or a rudder. I still believed God's presence was with me, kind of like that wind in my sails. I could feel it carrying me through, but I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know where my life was headed. I prayed, and I prayed for direction for months. And while I kept experiencing God's strength in small ways, I still felt stuck. For months, I couldn't move forward. One day, visiting my dad at the rehab hospital, the second of 3 hospitals he had been in, I began paying attention to the therapist who worked with him. Physical therapists were teaching him to walk again. Speech therapists were helping him relearn his words. Occupational therapists were guiding him in everyday tasks. I was struck by their patience, their skill, their compassion. I started inquiring with them, how did you get into this work? Why do you feel called to this very difficult occupation? And so many of them, almost all of them, answered, because I wanted to help people. Something about that caught my attention. And then one day, in the middle of a normal visit, Dad's physical therapist said, "Mr. Joe, you're working harder now that your daughter's here. She should come every day." Another therapist asked about my schedule so she could make plans to have her next sessions with me present with my dad. During the morning of that day, I had been praying specifically about my lack of direction. I had named it, and I had repeated words that the therapist had put into my mind, circling me back to that nudging of God. The words that God was nudging me because I wanted to help people. Because I wanted to help people. I realized I had that in my same spirit. And later that day, I stepped into the elevator to leave. The therapist, a couple of them who I knew, were on the elevator as well. They got off at a middle floor, and I continued on to the lobby by myself. And in that quiet moment, I felt the Spirit move in a way I can still remember vividly. It was as though a voice was speaking directly to me. You're called to go to seminary. In that moment, it was like my centerboard and my rudder dropped into place. My prayers and direction and a desire for stability were all answered. The voice wasn't audible, but I heard it. It was an answer to my prayers for direction and moving forward. Now, I can't explain why God spoke in that way. Why watching therapists led to a call to ministry, but I know this, it was real. In that moment, in that elevator, it was a thin place, as Celtic Christians call it. A moment when the veil between heaven and earth feels thin, and God's presence is unmistakable. We often hear that trauma, tragedy, and crisis become thin places for people. God's presence and assurance were evident to me in that elevator. It was a thin place. In that moment, I knew that Jesus understood my suffering, my search, and my need for help, and also knew that his mercy and grace were enough to carry me. Looking back, I see so clearly. In my season of weakness and disorientation, Jesus did not reject me. Instead, he gave me exactly what I needed: timely help. My story is not unique. Each of us will face seasons of weakness, disorientation, or loss. And in those moments, we may feel ashamed or defeated. But the letter to the Hebrews tells us otherwise. Weakness is not failure. Weakness is the place where Christ meets us with compassion. So let us draw near to the throne of grace with boldness. Let us bring our struggles, our uncertainties, our needs. For God's response is never going to be rejection. God is unconditional love. God's presence is always abundant. God's response is also always timely help. Thanks be to God. Amen.
I'm Sean Stanfield. I'm one of the pastors here at the Vine United Methodist Church, and we're just excited that you're with us today. We are a digital church with physical expressions. A physical expression means that we also do what we call branch groups. These are physical groups out in the community where you exist. We want to make sure that you're connected in spaces, and you can either be in home groups, you can be in third spaces like coffee shops or restaurants and those kind of things, because we're not designed to do life alone. So I want to encourage you, say, hey, where do I find a branch group in my area? We would help you with that. Or maybe you're the one that says, I want to start a branch group in my area, and I have people who want to come alongside me. Reach out to us, and we will help get you through the training and help guide you and what that would be like. Come and join a branch today.